Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of GrowthTalk, the podcast where we explore ways to improve ourselves, one step at a time. I'm Alex, your host, and today we're diving into a topic that I think many of us can relate to: procrastination. You know that feeling when you have a big task to do, but you find yourself scrolling through social media or binge watching your favorite series instead. Or when you tell yourself, "I'll start in 5 minutes," and suddenly 5 minutes turn into 5 hours. Trust me, I've been there too. Procrastination is something we've all faced at some point in our lives, and it can be a huge roadblock to achieving our goals. But here's the good news: procrastination is not an unsolvable problem. Today, we'll unpack what procrastination really is, why we do it, and how we can overcome it. I'll also be sharing practical tips and personal stories that you can relate to, and hopefully, by the end of this episode, you'll feel empowered to take action in your life. All right, let's get started. First things first, let's talk about what procrastination actually is. Procrastination is the act of delaying or postponing tasks despite knowing there could be negative consequences. It's not just about being lazy or unmotivated. It's deeper than that. For example, let's say you have an important deadline coming up. Instead of working on the task, you find yourself cleaning your room, reorganizing your desk, or even doing something completely unrelated like baking cookies. It's not that you're lazy, you're just avoiding the discomfort that comes with starting the task. According to psychologists, procrastination is often linked to emotional regulation. When a task feels overwhelming or unpleasant, we avoid it as a way to protect ourselves from stress or anxiety. Our brains crave instant gratification, so we choose easier, more enjoyable activities instead. Does that sound familiar? I'll share a quick story here. A few years ago, I had a big presentation for work. It was something I'd known about for weeks, but instead of preparing, I kept finding excuses to do other things. I told myself, I work better under pressure, and ended up pulling an all-nighter the day before. While the presentation turned out okay, the stress I put myself through wasn't worth it. I learned the hard way that procrastination doesn't just delay the work, it adds unnecessary pressure. So, why do we procrastinate? There are a few key reasons, and understanding these can help us break the cycle. One big reason is fear of failure. Sometimes we avoid starting a task because we're afraid we won't do it well. For instance, if you're writing an essay or working on a creative project, you might feel overwhelmed by the idea that it has to be perfect. That fear can paralyze you. Another reason is perfectionism. This one's tricky because perfectionism often disguises itself as a positive trait. You might think, I'm just aiming for high standards, but in reality, perfectionism can lead to procrastination. When you're fixated on getting everything exactly right, it can be hard to even start. Then there's lack of clarity. Have you ever procrastinated on something simply because you didn't know where to begin? Maybe the task felt too big or too vague. When we don't have a clear plan, it's easy to feel stuck. Finally, let's talk about time mismanagement. Sometimes we procrastinate because we think we have more time than we actually do. We underestimate how long a task will take or overestimate our ability to finish it quickly. That's how "I'll do it tomorrow" turns into "I'll do it next week." If any of these resonate with you, don't worry, you're not alone. Procrastination is a common struggle. And the fact that you're here listening to this podcast means you're already taking a step toward overcoming it. Now, let's take a moment to reflect on how procrastination impacts our lives. It's not just about missing deadlines or staying up late to finish tasks. Procrastination can affect our mental health, relationships, and overall sense of accomplishment. For example, when we procrastinate, we often experience guilt and stress. We know we should be working on something, but instead, we're doing something else. That guilt can be draining and make it even harder to start the task. Procrastination can also damage our self-esteem. When we put things off and then scramble to finish them at the last minute, we might not produce our best work. Over time, this can lead to feelings of inadequacy or frustration with ourselves. And let's not forget the impact on our relationships. If you're constantly late with projects at work, it can strain your professional relationships. If you're putting off household tasks, it might create tension with your family or roommates. So, while procrastination might feel like a temporary escape, it often creates more problems in the long run. But the good news is, there are ways to break free from this cycle. Let's talk about some strategies. All right, it's time for some actionable tips. If you're ready to tackle procrastination head-on, here are a few strategies you can try. 1. Break tasks into smaller steps. When a task feels overwhelming, it's easy to avoid it. But if you break it down into smaller, manageable steps, it becomes much less intimidating. For example, if you're writing a report, start with an outline. Then focus on one section at a time. Before you know it, you'll be making progress. 2. Set specific goals and deadlines. Instead of saying, "I'll do this eventually," set a specific deadline for each step of the task. And don't just keep the deadline in your head. Write it down or set a reminder. 3. Use the 2-minute rule. This is one of my favorite techniques. If a task takes less than 2 minutes to complete, do it immediately. This helps you build momentum and tackle small tasks before they pile up. 4. Eliminate distractions. If you find yourself getting sidetracked by your phone, social media, or other distractions, create an environment that minimizes those temptations. Put your phone on airplane mode, work in a quiet space, or use apps that block distractions. 5. Reward yourself. Give yourself a small reward for completing a task. It could be something as simple as taking a 5-minute break, having a snack, or listening to your favorite song. Rewards can motivate you to keep going. 6. Practice self-compassion. Remember, it's okay to struggle with procrastination. Be kind to yourself and focus on progress, not perfection. Celebrate the small wins along the way. Those are just a few ideas to get you started. In the next segment, we'll talk about how to build long-term habits that can help you stay productive and overcome procrastination for good. But before we dive into that, let's take a quick break. Stay tuned. Vocabulary section. Here are 4 challenging words from the podcast episode and their meanings. 1. Procrastination, the act of delaying or postponing something, often unnecessarily. Example sentence. Many people struggle with procrastination when faced with tasks they find boring or overwhelming. 2. Self-discipline, the ability to control one's feelings and actions to achieve goals, often requiring perseverance and focus. Example sentence. Building self-discipline is essential for overcoming procrastination and staying productive. 3. Accountability, taking responsibility for one's actions or decisions, often with the help of others to ensure follow-through. Example sentence. Having a study partner can provide the accountability you need to stay on track with your goals. 4. Momentum, the force or speed of movement that helps to maintain progress or keep something going. Example sentence. Starting with small, easy tasks can help build momentum to tackle bigger challenges later. So, today we've learned about what procrastination is, why we often delay tasks, and how it can affect different aspects of our lives. We've also discussed some practical strategies to help us get started and overcome procrastination. But our journey doesn't stop here. I've divided this discussion into 2 parts to make it easier to follow and apply. In the next episode, we'll explore how to build long-term habits, tips to stay consistent, and ways to train your mind to become more productive in the long run. Don't miss the next episode, and keep learning with us here on Growth Talk. If you have any experiences or tips about overcoming procrastination, feel free to share them in the comments section. I'd love to hear from you. See you in part 2.
Thank you for watching. Remember to keep learning and practicing every day. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss out on more helpful videos that make learning English easier and more enjoyable every day. See you in the next lesson.